remember to hit record. So we've got a good group here with this today. I recognize that not everyone who wants to participate in evacuation drills will be on. So that's why I'm going to record this, and hopefully we can get a lot more of the community members involved. This is the first time that we've done anything like this. You know, most communities rely on their first responders to conduct drills for them, but that's not realistic. And the first responders have said they don't really get good turnout. So we're hoping to take, matters into our own hands and figure out, what it is that we can do. And practice makes perfect. So like Brad was saying, it's not that we have all the answers, but that we are going to jump in and figure it out. So with that, I'm going to shift to my typical presentation and kind of get everybody set on the same page. So let's see, Brad, I see you. Let me know if you see my slideshow pop up.
Yep. Nice and clear.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So everyone, it looks like, well, maybe not everyone on this call, but most everyone on the call has a radio. We're also going to chat a little bit about how do we involve community members, neighbors that don't have radios, because that's a huge part of our evacuation. But from kind of a foundation perspective, Brad and I talked about this, and we see the radios as being the foundation and the backbone of our communication system. So the radios will be the source and sort of the how we launch these drills. And hopefully we'll start to get more people involved in, the right ways to use the radio. And part of these drills will also make sure that we can practice, and, it's a safe zone, right? So if we don't do it right, that's okay. So for those of you who might be newer, we are now in our 4th wildfire season with our radios, and we have approximately 100+ households on the radios. So yesterday when I sent out the email, I had to update our mailing list with who has radios, and people have moved and shifted and all that kind of stuff, but I sent the email out to 115 people. So that gives you a sense of how many folks actually have the radios. The other thing I think most of you are aware of is this year, in addition to the radios, we have the first fire season with our wildfire smoke sensors, and they have proven to be quite an interesting asset. I will remind everyone that this is part of a grant project, and we are the guinea pig community. So while the sensors aren't perfect in terms of the app and how we're responding, we have seen multiple fires thus far where they have provided early alerts. The most noteworthy, of course, was the Lowell fire, July 16th, that we reviewed on Monday. So for those of you who were there on that too, thanks for spending 2 nights with me this week. Last but not least, we're in the first couple of steps down a long path of creating our resident response team. And they will factor into these drills as well, because we have not had time to dial in how this whole team gets deployed. And so collectively, whether you're part of that team or not, everyone on the radio certainly, and hopefully in the broader community, needs to understand who these folks are, where they are, and can help, make sure that we deploy effectively and safely. So that's kind of the backdrop of our program. And then, obviously the kind of focus for this call is to talk about, smoke, fire, and roads, make sure we can test our response together. As a backdrop, the question I was asked is why now? One might think the right time to do this is in the spring, and it probably is, but we were busy doing green waste mitigation and doing all that kind of stuff, right? But the fact of the matter is that fall, September, October, November, is when most of the destructive fires have occurred. So we are facing potentially the riskiest part of the peak fire season in front of us. So when I pulled data from CAL FIRE, just updated through this year, and basically looked at most destructive, most deadly, and most costly fires. And in terms of how they were ranked in the top 20, these are the fires that occurred in each month that hit those rankings. So without worrying about the details, we all think about the Camp Fire in November, which, for me was a major turning point. But I think a lot of people, the reality is that there are throughout California significant fires during these months, and you just never know when it's going to hit. So these drills will help us be prepared. And just because it's fall and Labor Day is come and gone and kids are back in school, don't fall for it. Wildfire season isn't over. So that's kind of a good sort of entry point into, why we're doing a drill now. Recognizing that we should be on higher alert when red flag warnings occur, or fire weather, or lightning, like Holly brought up the other night. So things of that nature. All right. So as Brad and I started thinking about the drills and what we're trying to accomplish, kind of boiled it down into 3 primary buckets. The first one is we're all across the board in terms of people, even if they've been to one of our trainings, which our trainings have gotten better since we launched. So, some people aren't comfortable. Certainly there isn't a lot of sort of commonality in terms of the language. I think people are picking it up. But my biggest concern, of course, is that, we come into a wildfire event and someone's going to just jump on there and just start rambling and block the radio for all of us. So, I think it's super important that we continue to know how to talk on the radio, and we'll focus a little bit on that later. But also what we had originally discussed years ago, but have never implemented, is starting to become comfortable in the various roles. So if this were a big event, we have to be able to, ask someone to play a particular role and have them know what that role is. So, the ones we've been doing is smoke spotters, going out and checking after the sensors, road monitors is You Bet Clear. Those are things we talk about, but we haven't really been talking about or using some of the other ones, and we'll look at that. Emergency proficiency, that's like when the event occurs. How do we make sure that, we know where, it's kind of like right now, it's like, well, if somebody has a need, they'll let us know. But when you step back and look at how big You Bet is and how many potential households with 700 parcels, there could be a lot of people who are asking for help, and we have to figure out either collectively or personally how we want to participate in that response, right? So that's part of that emergency proficiency. We've had folks, neighbors like Deb down on Sontag Hill, who has in her past been EMT, paramedic, and said, hey, in an emergency, I'm on deck. I'm ready, willing, and able. I mean, she was a Red Cross certified responder. She's like, in an emergency, I'm ready, willing, and able to help where needed. But what we haven't done is say, okay, how do we figure out how to reach out to her? She is part of the radio program, but you know what I mean? So we have to start thinking through, like, what happens if. The last piece is just community confidence. And I think that's pretty self-evident, but I just wanted to put that out there because, and like I said, my biggest concern when I started was that someone would come in and just take over and the radios fall apart. But if we all work together, then we can trust the system and rely on each other. All right, just our standard refresher. We're big. We have a lot of roads. We've been emphasizing during our weekly check-ins on the radio on Sunday nights. We've been emphasizing, playing along with the map as we call out, that we're talking to Holly and Doug, that they are over here. At the end of the side bed area. When we talk to Rick, he's at the end over here. When we talk to Brad, he's way up here. So we've been, subtly trying to help everyone get familiar with both the areas in You Bet and the radio holders and the people. So that's just something we have to continue to work through. I mentioned non-radio neighbors, which is honestly probably the majority of our residents, right? Most of our neighborhoods, there is a handful of people in every neighborhood that has radios, but there's more non-radio neighbors than radio neighbors, if that makes sense. So, when you think about that, those of you who are neighborhood leaders, and there's a lot of you on the call, the role we're asking you to play is to coordinate with your immediate residents on and off You Bet in your area to handle, anything like check-ins. If there's somebody who's in trouble, if you've got someone who can go get them or needs help, handle that effectively if you can. If you can't, and it needs to elevate up to find someone who can assist outside of your neighborhood, then that comes to the radio and we'll work to assign that. But the reality is that with 700 parcels, it's going to be challenging to handle 700 issues on the radio. So we have to hope that each of you guys are able to sort of put out like whack-a-mole some of those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, different areas of You Bet, those leaders should respond with their local neighbors so that it's coordinated instead of free flow.
Yep, where possible. What that looks like visually, think about it, right? If I'm playing net control, or Holly, you've done a lot, Brad, you've done a lot, whoever's playing that net control role, and we have 20 neighborhood leaders, and we have someone monitoring fires and someone monitoring, the weather, and someone else checking out the zones of last resort, it can become pretty hectic pretty quickly. So think of it like air traffic control, and just really need to be a lot more sort of hierarchical and open and disciplined, I should say, regarding what we do. So let's jump into the drills. Fall GMRS radio drills. Brad and I talked earlier, and we kind of landed on an agreement that we should probably start with, trying to get something into place quickly. And so we're going to do a couple of radio only drills. And then a couple of weeks later, we're going to do some live action drills. The radio only drills that we've solicited or decided to work on are things that we're already sort of familiar with. So we're not introducing brand new concepts. The first one is smoke observation. And I mean, I'd say show of hands, how many of you guys have seen us on the radios going after the, smoke observation, whether it was the lightning, whether it's the alerts, whether it's the CAL FIRE call, and we're going out to check. So this is something we've already been doing. And we've had so many fires already this year that we've done it a lot. I look at each one of those events as a practice drill, but now's the time for us to say, okay, we've been doing this. Folks are pretty kind of used to hearing it. Let's switch roles. Let's ask people to expand the roles and bring in a weather watcher or someone else to monitor watch duty or whatever it is. And let's rotate. So the idea around the smoke observation is that that's what we'll do. And then evacuation coordination. This one is for me more around kind of starting to introduce this hierarchy concept and asking neighborhood leaders or just residents in the neighborhood who have radios to do some hypothetical check-ins with their neighbors, think about who might need extra help, do some road checking to make sure the road is clear, and starting that kind of approach of, hey, let's get eyes on your area. So if I call out to Sontag Hill, then that's going to be a Terry /Deb /Carolyn request. If we call out to the Red Dog area, that's an Anathea, a Brad, a Rob request, things like that. So that's what we'll do on Saturday, September 20th, which is 3 days away. How does that look? And that's radio only. So nobody needs to go anywhere, comfort of your own home, and whoever can participate participates. I think Brad and I recognized that this is an overtime proposition, and it's not going to be one and done. We're going to have to do multiple of these in order to get folks to have the opportunity to kind of participate. The second date is a couple of weeks down the road, a Sunday morning, October 5th. And what we ideally would like to do is incorporate what we were calling live action, which means actually ask people to practice whatever the assignment or scenario is by getting in their car, and it's like a go do. So that would be a little bit more of a time commitment, but it also would, test, like Brad said, test if people have the right things in their vehicle, which we talked a lot about during our preparedness sessions on Zoom in the spring. but also kind of broaden that reality of it and say, oh my gosh, I didn't think about my car being full of gas, or did I have a chainsaw with me to take down a blocked tree? So those are the two primary dates that we looked at in the scenarios that we picked. So let me open it up right now to just some conversation around that. Brad, before I open it up, did you want to elaborate on any of those?
Well, starting with the radios is basic. Net control, assigning duties, that will be, I think, key to keep things under control and in an orderly fashion. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
And we may have volunteers, so someone will step up and say, I'm on the smoke spotter app right now. I'm watching watch duty, camera systems. There's a lot of different tools that we have now, and different residents can go onto those and contribute.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great call out. Perfect example was last Sunday.
Yeah.
I was launching a 9 a.m. call about the You Bet grants, right? We had Alice is on the call here, and a few of us were going to do that meeting, and it was like 8:48 a.m., something like that, that the call out on the radios came in that there was a fire in the Greenhorn Creek, Red Dog Crossing, and Mike's scrambling to deploy, and I'm on the radio trying to figure out what's going on. So I postponed the meeting, and then I got back on. I'm like, what I should have done, bottom line is, I kept the radios open and I kept the meeting going simultaneously. I should have said, who's on the radio right now who could monitor watch duty and or monitor CAL FIRE dispatch and put that information on the radio. So instead, I was doing the CAL FIRE monitoring, pausing the meeting, and doing the announcing. So that was a mistake on my part. And so that's the kind of stuff where we have to get better at saying, who's on right now? And Rick Barber's on Sontag Road. Every time he checks in, he's like, I listen to this. I could have said, Rick Sontag, are you on? And he could have said, yes, Casey. Rick, can you pick up monitoring CAL FIRE and making reports back on the radio? And he would say, yes, Casey. And then I would know that I don't have to monitor CAL FIRE. I could turn it off and focus on the meeting, but still monitor their You Bet radio. So these are the kinds of things that we need to become, not that we're going to end up, in a big fire or stuff, doing two things at once, but just being aware that we need to engage specialists on the radio to handle a single task so that we can stay free to, look at the bigger picture. So let me, like I said, open it up, feedback on these drills, and obviously on the dates. That's one of the biggest things. So everybody who would love to hear from you guys, go off mute. Let's just have a little chit chat about this before we go into the next step.
Nick Price, Old Donner. Is there a proposed time on Saturday, or is this kind of an unknown kind of drill activity where it's going to be a surprise?
Well, I think we should land on a time. And I thought about that. I'm like, it's me. I'm like, let's do it at 9 a.m. I'm like, I thought we'd just have a conversation and figure out, A, if anyone can participate, and B, what time works. What time works for you, Nick? We'll make it all about you. How's that?
You said 9 a.m. I think that's a fine time to do this.
Cool. Let's see by show of thumbs on the screens. Does that work for everyone, or those of you? Greg, yes. Awesome. Ken, yes.
Ron
Going down a lot of
Ron Schaefer, yes.
Ron Schaefer. Awesome, Ron.
Brad, yes.
Cool. Brad, yes. Okay, that's an important one. Cool. So we'll say 9 a.m. on Saturday. And just so you guys know, I'm starting to take whatever the agreement is and then publish it on Nextdoor and Facebook too. And then once the outcomes of this are done, I'll send out specific details to all of you guys that are tagged with radios. Like I said, it was 115. So I'll send a actionable email to everyone with all this information too, but this is awesome. But what about the drills themselves? Do you guys think these are like a starting point? Wait, let me back up. Brad and I, when we brainstormed this 2 months ago, we came up with 20 different scenarios that we could drill on. So we just picked these to start. But does that seem realistic and kind of doable. Ken, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, that looks pretty good. We just need to practice.
Yeah.
Looks good to me. This is Ron.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, well, I'm going to move on because we have a slide per drill. And as I share sort of the what they look like, it might spark some ideas. So it's the same format for each of the 4 drills. I'm going to walk through briefly what it looks like, and then we'll talk about each one. So the first one is a smoke observation drill. And we've been doing smoke observation in the woods a lot. So this should be one that everyone is pretty familiar with. We tend to pile on to the smoke when we hear it. So there's that. And what it basically will be is, someone will report the visible smoke. This may be something they see, or it may be from the smoke detectors, right? So we could have 2 scenarios there. Then someone will be assigned the net control to organize the reports and relay info. So we'll probably pre-designate people, once we know who's actually on, to be the smoke people. And then we'll have a little bit of a overview, but basically that person will say who, what, where, right? I can resurface the smoke description little infographic I put together when we did our sensor training to make sure everyone knows how to describe the smoke, but that's part of it. And we'll practice keeping the reports short, clear, and factual. So we have those kinds of basic rules, and we'll just rotate them through based on whoever's on. So that one's the easiest one we have. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Cool.
that's a basic starting point and good.
Super simple, nice and easy. Then we're going to move into, as I mentioned, sort of an evacuation coordinator drill with a purpose of starting to ask residents who in each area, whoever's on in your area, what's your status? What's your route? Do you see any issues? Do you see any people? When you might provide your household status, you might provide your neighborhood status. Yeah, we've got a lot of folks in some areas that have horses and things like that. We don't want people panicking. I can't solve everyone's problems, but we can start to, provide resources and feedback and help. The main thing for this purpose is safe routes. So if you are reporting out on this, if you have a road that's blocked or concern that it's encroaching, or if you have a backyard evacuation egress that is open, right? So it's not always bad news. So this is the opportunity to sort of share what's going on in your specific area. And then the roles will be net control, which we will rotate, the household or neighborhood leads with the zone captains and the household, and introducing the road recon. We've called it road monitor or scout, whatever that is. Basically, in a priority here will be anybody on You Bet first and foremost, and then we'll look at secondary routes. So with You Bet being our lifeblood, the first thing we want to know is You Bet available for evacuation? Are there other communities like Lost Lake Road, which services Greenhorn? And in an extreme version, would Banner Mountain be coming over Red Dog to Chalk Bluff? So those are unlikely scenarios, but A, we want to make sure You Bet is open, not blocked. And then B, how's the traffic look? So if someone's choosing to evacuate, can they just scoot down You Bet to 174? Or if somebody at Mulberry or Fifield comes out and says, hey, we're at Mulberry, cars are backed up to here. That's a really bad sign, because everyone remembers the worst place to be in a wildfire is trapped in your car. So if we're backed up to Mulberry and we haven't left yet, we shouldn't be leaving. So this evacuation coordination, we can make this go a variety of directions, but that's the basic kind of idea. Okay, thoughts on this one?
Casey,
Yes.
this is Ron Schaefer.
Hi, Ron Schaefer.
I have a question. The something that's concerned me with this whole evacuation issue is I'm down on Pearson Road. So I'm at the bottom of the hill. I got the easiest out. If anything happens, I can get out before people start coming down the hill probably. Do we know if the highway patrol, I guess, who's in charge of 174, would allow me, for instance, to get myself out, get my family down to a place down the road that's close, and then come back and actually be able to control traffic on 174 to let the You Bet people out so that it isn't just a huge jam at 174. Has anybody talked to the highway patrol about that?
Yeah, yes, and thank you for thinking about that. It's one of those questions that the answer is always it depends.
Okay.
Yeah, so the sheriff's office is actually the one in charge of evacuation. OES is in charge of support systems, and then the firefighters obviously are response, right? So the sheriff's office has a liaison that works directly with the fire people, but how many sheriffs do we have in Nevada County? Not that many. So they're, when they say, will we have someone there? They say, we'll try. So, and, depends on where the fire is, how many people are being evacuated, how many communities are impacted. I mean, it goes on and on, all the factors.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if I were you, and I love that you bring this up, I'd have an orange vest. I'd be ready to go with cones and, someone needs to control that. And everyone I've talked to, including yesterday when I was doing an event with 3 Grass Valley firefighters, I said, if we're trapped, you guys are trying to get in and our people are trying to get out. A, what's the priority? And B, what do you want us to do? Well, their answer was, if you guys could help hold your neighbors while we pass by, or vice versa, someone controls who's going first on a one-way road. They're like, yeah, we'd love you guys to do that. So, go ahead.
That's a role I could play. I'm too old to get up and actually fight the fires and respond to the things, but I could do something like that, is to ensure that the people on You Bet can get out onto 174 and keep things moving down there. So just keep
Like
that
traffic monitor.
traffic control. Sure.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for that. And yeah, I mean,
Casey,
yes, sir.
I have also in my career done traffic management with utilities construction on the road, and I've got the vests and the flags and the cones and all that. You're right, though, having or not relying on the sheriff's department or CHP being out here timely is when, just like a first response, we
Yeah.
can help manage the traffic if it's out of control.
Yeah, and I don't know any, legal stuff around this. Now that people are saying I can do it, we should probably look into that. But I think, in an emergency, pretty much everything goes, right? But I guess I would say if the fire is not in You Bet and we're not in a panic, we have to be cognizant of who is in a panic and what direction does that traffic flow need to be from a priority perspective. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be really situational, but thank you for bringing that point up. That's super cool. At a minimum, we go ahead. We can do that. Hang on a second. In a minimum, we might be needing to do that within our own community too, right? So we can kind of handle inside the boundaries of You Bet with that. Go ahead, Ken.
One of the things I think would be important is have somebody that's down there at the 174 intersection able to spot and feedback to us how busy 174 is. I picture 174 just being absolutely backed up, and it would be a scary thought to head in that direction and then hit 174. So I think we need to have somebody in this group that's assigned to go down to that intersection and give us feedback of what's going on.
You're right. And I love where you're going with this, because I've thought about sort of creating these buckets of people in specific areas and saying, this is what we're going to count on you for. Aaron and Christine on Lower You Bet are not on the call tonight, but they know that their role, because they are literally, as you come from 174 up You Bet, they're on the right-hand side, even before Fawn Hill. And so they know that their task is to report out on if cars are backed up in front of them. But I like where you're going, right? So when you said anybody in that sort of immediate You Bet or 174 area, that's Dennis and Gary and Dean and Ron Schaefer and Aaron and Rose. we have and Terry and Janet, we have a ton of people that are engaged in that area right now. That was just off the top of my head. So some have radio, some don't. So the other piece we're going to talk about is somebody who doesn't have a radio could be the one stationed down there, and they could be texting somebody with the radio to report out on that. So that's a great call. What else on this evacuation coordination? Any thoughts, or what does it bring to mind for you? Okay, cool. So again, this one was for evacuation coordination for You Bet, and the primary focus is roads. Roads first on You Bet, and secondly within each subsequent neighborhood, and what's the status, what's the coordination, and also helping to introduce the idea of people are going to be asked, do their neighbors need help? Are they good? Can we just move on?
That's a pretty dire picture.
Well, you should have seen the one that was in full color. I went black and white with a highlight of flames, but guess what, guys? This could be reality. I'm just putting a sense of urgency on there. My job, keep it real. Okay, so that's evacuation coordination drills. Now we shift to a couple weeks down the road when we want to do more live action. And for this one, what we really want to try to do is just start down the path of having all of us help figure out and work with our teams who have been trained and or have been hand raisers and or are just going to jump in and be first responders. So just to underscore, in You Bet, 100% of the time so far, our locals are first in on every fire. Whether they choose to go after the fire or not, doesn't matter. We are first in, and sometimes that means we are identifying the location, the type of smoke we're seeing, helping direct, first responders back to the actual location. Which, by the way, did you guys know we had a fire last night, 10-something p.m.? Hear
Nope.
that? Yep. We had another fire in Greenhorn, Red Dog. I ended up calling 911. Mike and I were like, should we go? Should we stay? They were barking up the wrong tree. They were headed up Mule Canyon to try to get through Hanson's Brothers, but the call out was for Greenhorn and Red Dog. And this went on for 45 minutes. So I finally called 911 and redirected them up, You Bet, to Red Dog and down Red Dog to the crossing. So yeah, so the point is our wildfire response might just be supporting the fire agencies with accurate location, because not everyone knows our area. And we do get a lot of instances where the trucks come in and they go to the wrong place, or they can't find where they're supposed to go. So that wildfire response could be as simple as that, or it could be, hey gang, those of you who have been trained and have the proper protective gear, and you've got a water tank, let's get you in first in, and so forth. So the idea here is that we'll come up with a variety of scenarios, and our fire response team or brigade assesses and reports out. And then we in turn ask neighbors to, report out different things like I was saying before, whether it's monitoring watch duty or CAL FIRE, or importantly, the weather. We desperately need to know and have a lot of people ready to report on which way is the wind blowing, what is the wind speed, and helping to calculate the distance between ignition or fire and location. That's the most critical piece of information that we need to have. So that's kind of what the idea is around this particular drill. Again, I'll open it up. Let's talk about it.
Well, Casey, what you just mentioned about weather, in the past couple of years, we've had other semi-local fires. I remember one in Dutch Flat. First thing I check is wind direction. If it's going east from Dutch Flat, not going to bother us. And,
Right.
I'm pretty comfortable. I still check, see if wind direction changes, and I can see drops on past fires over Dutch Flat. I can see the south, part of the east, and part of the west from my backyard. So observation and wind, I really pay attention to.
Yep. Yep, that's, I don't think we could say it enough. The two most important things to find out about a fire is first, identify the location. Second, which way and how fast is the wind blowing? Those are the two most critical pieces of information. And that's the stuff we'll be asking on the radio. Those of you guys who were listening in on let me get my fires straight now, the Sunday morning Red Dog Greenhorn Crossing fire. So my guy, Mike, he was down there and he started talking about, oh my God, there's 26 cars and he's blah, 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 blah. Well, we're all sitting hanging on our edge trying to, like, we're blind. We don't know what's happening. So he finished his story on the radio and I said, Mike, factual, is there a fire? And if so, how big is it? Tell us that other stuff later, right? But what we need to know collectively is is it a fire? A, because it was called in as smoke from Kelly, our neighbor. B, what's happening with that fire, and C, what's the threat level and the risk level that we're facing right now, so we know how to react. Hang on a sec. I'm gonna go close the door.
So Casey,
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
something else that we're missing in this whole thing is notifying all of us. I think we need to come up with an app that if there's a fire, someone can go ahead and text that there's a fire, say, on Greenhorn Creek, and have that go out to everybody on that list. Because I think the biggest problem, not everybody's listening to the radio, but everybody has their phone with them. So we need to come up with an app that will broadcast what the issue is, even if it's just get on the radio.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, a few years back, I looked at a whole bunch of those apps. Kelly on Fifield uses his parent teacher app, and there's a bunch of them out there. Rob, who's one of our tech savvy guys, he had a couple. They were beyond me in terms of complexity and how to set them up. But we definitely I would love to see someone who could, own that and get that up. In the meantime, remember that the radios do have an alarm, and we have been training folks to that alarm. We'll use that as part of this drill. So during this time of year, we recommend that everyone keeps their You Bet radio on monitor, and you can quiet down. You don't need to monitor your second channel, right? So I always mute CAL FIRE if I'm asleep and keep You Bet up. But the reality is that, we shouldn't be having our radios off during this time of year. A lot of the fires, if you guys are tracking with them, they're starting in the mornings. So these last couple that have occurred, right? The Greenhorn Creek one, Sunday morning. Well, we heard from neighbors on Chalk Bluff. They'd been hearing that crew of 26 vehicles, people out there since Friday night. Greenhorn Creek, Bear River, Steep Hollow, they have a history of recreational users, weekends, holidays. Just they're going to do campfires. So, hold on one sec. Brad, lead a question. I'm going to go let the dogs out.
Okay. What Casey was talking about and our drills and what I've talked to her about is I want to focus on real life scenarios, things that give us good experience in our whole procedure, whether it's communication, evacuation, responding to a fire. The ones that we've had a handful of residents respond both on site and on the radios. And it's helpful. I consider them practice and good practice. I value it. And I have a truck that's on the ready, parked near my house with a water wagon, with rakes, with a pump, hoses, turnout suit. I'm ready to go and respond when we need it. And the more people, you don't need to be that degree, but just have a plan in your head. The first thing I check is the wind. If there's a fire reported and it's a calm, still day, I'm not too worried. The fire's not going to travel fast. Both us and CAL FIRE and the first responders can get to it, and they take care of 99% of them. The wind is what gets me concerned, and it's not very often we have those winds during fire season. There's a few days during the summer and the fall, but That's my concern. And doing
Well, and
is what's going to
yeah,
help.
thank you, Brad. I want to add to the wind, right? So the northeast winds that are the most dangerous and, put the fear of God into all of our fire agencies do happen in the fall. That was the Camp Fire and others, right? Those were accelerated by it, but not just the wind. So we have advance warning when fire risk is going to occur. The red flag day equals a weather watch. It means it's hot and dry, and any ignition start that happens during that period will accelerate faster. So the fire that just occurred, the July 16th Lowell fire, one of the, the first responders said is, hey, it's not that hot. If that fire had occurred in September, October, it would have been a different story, the same exact scenario, just the weather difference. So we do have a heads up on, how alert we should be. So small fire starts in May aren't as big a deal as maybe that same fire start in October. All right, so this response is going to engage our neighbors. Our goal is to have a lot of the folks, and these are our friends and neighbors. Upper left, there's Billy and Rob. Below left were the girls, Virginia, Diane, me, and Cheyenne. The group of us in our wildland firefighter training, this was back, in the spring. And so these are the folks that have gone through and learned how to be safe, how to use the hand tools to slow the fire growth, learn how and where to put water and what to watch out for. I'd like to say we know enough to be dangerous, but this is a team that stepped in to really say, hey, if something's going on, we've got a little bit of information and we were going anyway, so now we can be better. So this drill is designed to help all of us support this team, and help, make sure that they are safe and successful by providing appropriate information and all that good stuff. Pretty cool, huh? I love that team.
Yep.
And by the way, you guys should know, I'm going back to the photo. We already have one resident who did go through the Peardale Volunteer Firefighter Program, and he's been actively working on fires, including strike teams, for the last 3 or 4 months. That's Mike on Greenhaven. But of this picture, I know firsthand that at least 3 of these people have gone down to 1, 2, 3, maybe more, have gone down to Peardale and filled out applications to become paid call firefighters. So thank you guys. Really appreciate you, because that just means that you'll have extra training and can help all of us, with a rapid response team with the right tools and the right knowledge. That's a huge thing. This is massive. Yeah, okay. Moving on. The last drill that we talked about, this is a super common scenario in You Bet, whether it's Snowmageddon or wildfire. We're going to have trees down. It's just the way it is. Part of what we're working toward is clearing our roads, clearing the roadside vegetation, whether it's ladder fuels or hazard trees, so that we can have a safer evacuation route, but also so that trees don't come down and block the roads. So we want to simulate that. What happens when the road's blocked? How do we communicate that? Do we have alternatives? So what's interesting here is it's not just, hey, let's get resources with chainsaws to clear that tree, but it's also, an opportunity for us to start thinking specifically about the backyard handshake agreements we have. So Doug and Holly, right? So we talked about how you guys can go backyard over to Capitol can go to Fawn Hill. We have a lot of those sort of scenarios, and we're trying to build that list. I have a Google form out there that I've emailed to everyone, asking everyone to please document the backyard agreements that you know about, because we want to use them in this scenario. So if we're in a position where we're on the radios and Sontag Road is blocked, and somebody's on the radio and says, hey, we've got a group of 10 vehicles here on Sontag, we can't get to You Bet, and no, we can't get this tree cleared out in time. We want to be able to tell them how they can cut through and go to Fifield, because there is a cut. We want to tell them how to make sure if they don't already know it, how they can head up to Sontag Hill, because there is a route. It may not be ideal and it may not be guaranteed, but it exists. So if we can consolidate all of those backyard egress into this form, and then share it with folks who are going to be net control, then we are in a position where we can actually help save lives. So I just thought I'd put that out there because I don't have a lot of responses on that, only a couple. But the roadblock, yeah. So this is, an area where, we can assign multiple people to different roles. We'll do a few roads and have different folks play each role. So that's kind of what this one is. Open that up for conversation.
Well, I have to do road clearing every winter. I have downfall in old mining roads around my property that every year, and I do thinning around the property here. So it's like another day, seems like.
Yeah. It's another day in terms of once you're there and doing it with chainsaws, but it's different when we're saying somebody's calling in and saying, you court is blocked. We can't get to it from our side and we have to deploy a team to go help.
Casey,
Yeah.
could we add to the list of things that we need to know about our households who have reliable tractors? Do you know what heavy equipment? Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Brad?
Absolutely. If they're especially spread out around the community, I have a couple up here at my property. I know of a few other residents who have them, and they are spread out. I only am more familiar with Upper You Bet, in my area, middle of You Bet down towards 174. It would be good to have an inventory or a list of homeowners with tractors, heavy equipment in other parts of You Bet.
Well, that could be a good question that we might be able to go to a few of our neighbors who we really want to have radios. They happen to be neighbors with families, so they're less likely, they just don't have the time to be as involved as Doug and I do. But we'd like to have another way to approach them. If they don't want to do radios, but they're willing to be helpful with their equipment. So that's just a thought.
The problem is how to communicate with these people. The problem is we have 11 properties that we're looking at. 3 of them have radios. Several of them have locked gates. They have never responded to any of the queries that Holly has put out and posted on the mailboxes. And we just have no way to contact them. We don't know their emails or their phone numbers or anything. At what point do you deal with the people you can communicate with and everybody else is on their own?
That's kind of what,
Yeah, we just
go ahead. Holly.
Yeah. I mean, we can cope with that. There's a couple where I could walk up to the house but I do think that could be valuable on all the smaller roads, only in that, if you have a piece of heavy equipment that you can put a chain to pull a log off the road, that would be pretty helpful.
And we do have, a little bit of a head start on knowing that, but we've never had anyone sort of own it and coordinate it and plot it on a map. For those of you who know like what GIS is and maps, they're super sophisticated these days. And my vision is that we have one big You Bet map with a variety of layers. And one layer would be the radio holders, and that plops down on the map with a colored dot, and that's the people with radios. We have another layer with the people trained to be part of the fire brigade, and we overlay that. We have another layer with the heavy equipment, and we overlay that. We have another layer with the water sources, and we overlay that. So, I mean, 100%, you're on the right track. Technology exists today. Some of us, like me, we don't have the skills to do it. I have a vision, but I can't implement it. So we have a list of some people, but it's sort of force of effort to coordinate. We've got Chris on Sontag Road who does the road maintenance, tons of equipment. We've got, a gentleman right on You Bet who's told me he's got heavy equipment, anything we need. Does he participate in these calls? No, but we have a lot of folks all throughout You Bet that have it. So it's,
And the Tony.
And the Tonys for sure. Chalk Bluff has, tons of equipment. Rob's got equipment. We've got equipment. Brad's got equipment. It goes on and on. So, Rick, who I think is on the call, he's at the end of Sontag Road, and he's got his tractor prepared and ready to go to try to move blocks out of the way to make it an egress. But the more we collectively know this stuff and have these conversations, then when we put the call out on the radio, we're all kind of in that space. All right, well, I think this one's kind of like the first one, a bit of a no-brainer. The difference here is that, Brad's vision is that we'll actually have people not only go out and do driving, but what I want to layer in here is what we talked about in our spring meetings. If you're trying to evacuate and you can't because, say, a tree is down and you're blocked, where do you go? So this is an opportunity for us to start asking people to go to what we've been calling the zones of last resort. And as you'll remember, we identified all of those in our sessions. So it could be Peninsula Campground, the parking lot, it could be the Hanson's Brothers Quarry. So as part of this exercise, what we would like is for people to actually get detoured off their evacuation and go to A, B, or C, which we'll call out and let us know if that evacuation emergency spot is open and available, or if that's blocked for some reason. So this will start to help us rehearse the idea of, a scenario, which is a reality, that 174 and You Bet and people like Ron Schaefer who think they're going to sneak out may not be able to go. They may have to turn around and go up You Bet and go to a ZLR, a zone of last resort. So this is a kind of an overlay to that. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, we need alternatives to You Bet Road.
You're talking, Holly, but you were.
Oh, I'm just agreeing.
Yourself.
I'm just in agreement. We absolutely need those. So, and again, I mean, I wish I really knew what they need to look like. I mean, we won't have a very good one down here, but theoretically we probably have a little spot. I don't know. I don't know what they look like.
Well, that's part of this exercise then, is helping people come familiar with it. But yeah, so here's an example of a tree and the fire is behind it and we can't get through and we don't want to get through. We got to turn around and go the other way. So my question to everybody is, where's the other way? Do you know? Have you been there? So this will help create a real life sort of practice scenario around some of that. Okay, so those are the 4 drills that we came up with. The basics. This is a refresher on radio etiquette. We have evolved our radio training for those of you who haven't been in years. It's getting better each time. I did publish, we're going to do another one. I wasn't going to do any more this year, but we're going to do another radio training on October 4th because we've got a lot of folks that are interested in hearing about it. And so I'm just going to carve out the day and make it happen. But the basics, foundation. If you have an emergency, you are the first one on the radio. Radios are quiet. To Ken's point, you might sound the alarm if you know it's a fire for sure, right? Get everybody's attention. You call out. This is KC on Old Immigrant Trail, WRTL 864. I have an emergency. I repeat, is anyone on? Does anyone hear me? Somebody's going to come back and say, usually it's Brad. Usually it's Holly. Usually it's Terry. Thank you guys for monitoring. Yes, Casey, we hear you. I have an issue. We have a fire start. It's a lightning strike. I believe that it's down in the canyon. It looks like it's on Arrowhead Mine. And then we go from there. So this is how we start sort of that conversation. The one thing that I need to tell everybody is I'm hearing so much conversation when we have fires. I've encouraged everyone to listen to the CAL FIRE channel and how brief they are. It's information, fact, acknowledge, over. There is no full sentence. There is no story. It is about clarity. You don't need to shout, but you do need to project. The way I think about it is I'm talking to the back of the room. If I'm doing a speaking presentation, I'm not talking to the front row. They can hear me. I have to talk to the back row, and then I know that you guys can hear me. Be very short comments. Acknowledge. Don't leave us hanging. Over. Things of that nature. Simplicity. We don't use 10 codes. We want to keep our language everyday language and keep it simple. I have big words, but I don't need to use them on the radio. I'll save them for this. Last but not least, do remember that anybody could be on board listening in, and it could be possible that there's someone who did not ID themselves as You Bet resident, and we have to be ready to, deal with that positively. But anyone could be overhearing us. The other thing that I was going to share with you guys is that I have descriptions of all of the roles. This is a very top line role that we've been sharing at our trainings over the last year and a half. So a lot of you guys who've been on the radios for a while probably have not seen this. But I've also put together a handbook that I've been handing out at the radio training, which I will update and then share out in preparation for these drills. So it includes a lot of information around each of these roles, what that role, like road monitor, what that role looks like, kind of a how to play that role, ideas in terms of the things that you would say and so forth and so on. So we're not going to be just shooting from the hip. I have a little bit of a manual. It's a work in progress, but it gets better every time we have something like this. So I want to make sure that everybody has that in their hand and knows about it so that we can all be on the same page. One of the things I've learned is that language matters, and each word that we choose to use in every scenario is critical. And if we're all on the same page using the same words, then we can keep our messages really short. So I'll share that with you guys. That makes sense? Okay, well, we'll open it up for conversation and comments, but my PSA, public service announcement, is that we are in fire season, the thick of it. I just wanted to reiterate some stuff that we covered in the spring during our PPE readiness. Keep your clothes by your bedside, the infographic on the left. There's no time. If the fire hits on top of us in You Bet, you got to have your wool or cotton clothing ready to go. Just keep a stack by the bed until we get the drenching rains. And then the last piece is, you've heard me talk extensively about that wool blanket. 100% wool. Make sure you've got them in your car, in your house, everywhere. They can be used for protection if you need to go. If you're planning on a water, rescue or a water place to be, then you can even use the wool blanket over your head to protect your air passageways. If you're trapped in your vehicle, it's probably the most important thing you can have to cover you. So I just wanted to end with a PSA for that, and now open it up to questions, comments, feedback, thoughts, anything.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
This is
Doug.
Doug here.
And and make sure you tell everybody your name and road so we can start to get familiar with it all.
This is Doug Miner. I'm Doug and Holly, and we are on SureBet in the You Bet area, in the off of SideBet area. So my question is has any discussion ever been taken up about the appropriateness of neighborhood leaders having bullhorns in order to communicate with people who don't have radios or may not have their radios turned on in the event of an emergency? Is that an appropriate thing?
100% appropriate. And the other thing I've always recommended, and I've shared it out at our Go Bag pop-up, is I carry those little $5 air horns, that they're used like for boaters and stuff like that. I carry that as well. Other questions, comments, thoughts?
Rich, comment?
Go ahead, Rich. Where you live?
Rich on Greenhaven. Diane and I went through the process of putting together our go bags and our lists and all that. One of the things that we discovered was tools and chainsaws and stuff like that are not stored where we're going to evacuate. They're down in the barn because they're used on a regular basis. So we've actually created a list to remind us to go down to the barn and grab the chainsaw and the shovels and the rakes.
Nice. Yeah, that's I love you bringing that up, because there's always things that we use on an everyday basis or regularly that don't make it there. So, if you're like me and it's in your head, that's one thing, but then your head's overwhelmed. So making a list is great. On the shovel front, Mike laughs at me because he's like, you've got a little shovel everywhere. Those little baby shovels, like the little folding camping ones, got them in every vehicle. Because you know what? I'm not going to remember a shovel if I'm, and not only, it's not even evacuating. If I'm driving around and there's fire starts on the side of the road, which is where a huge percentage of fire starts occur, what am I going to do? Jump out and kick it with my shoe? No, I unfold my little camp shovel and I put dirt on it. So Mike can laugh at me all he wants, but the reality is I may never need it, but it makes me feel better to have it.
Keep it there for winter because you'll need it to dig out.
Yeah, there you go.
Mike, comment?
Go ahead, Mike.
You have too many shovels.
I know, isn't it great? You could shovel it, baby. All right, any other comments or questions on the evacuation drills? My first question is, I know we need to do this. Brad and I talked about it. It's like, will we? Are you guys going to join? Like, how are you going to help spread the word? Like, is this going to happen, or is it just going to be me and Brad on the radios going, "Hey, Casey, go check this road"?
Yeah, that's where we just need community participation. Everyone at least monitoring the radios to know what's happening.
Greg at You Bet and Side Bet, you've probably thought about this already, but if we're communicating over the radios on these drills, there should probably be a frequent reminder, this is just a drill. So we don't have a panic mode from people that are just coming on.
Yeah, 100%, Greg. And that when we do the trainings down at Fire Station 257 and we do live drills, we always do those announcements. But thanks for the reminder. Go ahead, Doug, you had your hand up? No? Nope, I guess not. I was just flipping through the pictures. We have a variety of people that are just listening without cameras. So Thomas Wan, Gary, Ron Miner, Terry, McDonough, Rick. Anybody want to chime in? Rose, Mary. Hi, Mary. Anyone? Terry Young. Anybody else have any thoughts or want to, what'd you think? This is us, right? I know I do all the talking on these things, but it's for us collectively. I'd love to get your feedback.
This is Ron Schaefer. I think
Go ahead, Ron.
It's been an excellent presentation, and looking forward to the drill.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. Anyone else?
Just a comment on and somebody who this is Doug on SureBet. If there is a fire nearby, there's a high probability that cell towers would be involved, and we might not have any cell service. So my suggestion would be that anybody assigned to direct traffic at 174 or anywhere along UBET would have a radio.
Yep, totally agree. Thank you for calling that out. That's when Aries helped us launch this program 4 years ago. That was one of their leading comments, was that, it's not that cell towers might go down, it's that they do. In the campfire in Hawaii, Maui, all of these places, they lost communication capability because they did not have these radios. So, the fact that we have them, and again, I go back to the slide that I presented early on, neighbors that don't have radios, take the ownership of finding out who in your immediate area does have radios and set up that buddy system, because we do have over 100 households throughout UBET with radios today. So while we use the radios as our backbone for communication, because it's instant and it's one to many, we recognize that we have a lot of neighbors that don't. But that's where, whether it's neighborhood leaders or just folks who have radios, they're not on tonight, but like Angelo is awesome, kind of Fifield, Makikuja area. He's got what we call his tribe. So you guys have heard us call on Angelo's tribe during the Sunday night weekly check-ins, and that might be Tom, it might be Bennett, anybody might be responding out of that area, but we know they're watching each other's back. And that's super cool, right? So if you don't have a radio, please make sure that you know who in your immediate vicinity does. Then you can call or text them with information. And as a case in point, that's exactly what happened on the fire this past Sunday. Kelly Hosfeld, the end of Lawton's, did not have a radio. His wife smelled smoke. Kelly's been around running Red Dog UBET stuff for years, decades. He called on Anthea, his neighbor, and he knew she had a radio. Anathea got on and said, break, break, there's a fire, there's smoke, blah, blah, blah. Instantly we went into reaction. So it's not always the radio folks who are going to initiate this. It can come from anyone, as long as everyone in your area knows who has the radios. We can galvanize the entire community fast. All right. Well, on that note, I will package everything up and get it out on email. I thank you guys for coming this evening. Particularly thank Brad for the poke, even though it took months to get it going, and we'll see what happens. Progress, not perfection. We'll do it Saturday and we'll go from there. So thanks, guys. What's the answer? Let's go get ready for wildfire.
You bet.
All right, kids. Have a good night.
Night.
Bye all.